I always thought betrayal would come like a lightning strike, sudden, shocking, impossible to prepare for. Instead, it came wrapped in silk ribbons, wedding brochures, and the honeyed voice of my sister, Amelia, who'd always known how to make ambition sound like love. When our great Aunt Maren passed away and left behind her vast income Manor, a sprawling estate worth nearly $450,000 in land, orchards, heritage trees, and rental revenue, I didn't think much of it. The Manor was an old soul's home, not the sort of place Amelia ever cared about. She liked bright lights, loud laughter, and applause. I liked quiet corners, and the dusty smell of old books. We were different, but we were sisters. That still meant something to me then. But the moment Amelia stepped onto the Manor grounds with her fiancé, say Justin, an overeager investment banker with teeth too white to be trusted, I felt the air shift. Her eyes didn't soften with nostalgia, they gleamed. She looked at the Manor the way a stranger looks at prey. "It's perfect," she breathed, her voice floating across the lawn like a velvet ribbon. "The wedding will be unforgettable. The wedding. Not our family home, not Aunt Maren's legacy, just a stage for her grand performance." I swallowed the knot in my throat. "I thought you two were getting married in the city, at that riverside venue you picked." She waved her perfectly manicured hand. "Oh, please, that was before I realized what we had here. This Manor has character, and once it's featured in the wedding articles, the value will skyrocket. I'm thinking destination, wedding level." Her smile sharpened. "It's convenient that you're the one living here. Convenient. As if my whole adult life, spent maintaining the home Aunt Maren trusted me with, was just a placeholder for her big moment." Justin chimed in with a rehearsed laugh. "Think of it as an investment. Exposure like this could turn the Manor into a high-manned venue, and when Amelia and I take over managing it. I repeated, every syllable sounding foreign in my own mouth. Amelia looped her arm through his. "Don't look at me like that. Obviously, you'll still be around, but I have a vision, okay, a bigger one, and you know me. I make things happen." Yes, she did. She always had. When we were children, she was the one who chose which games we played, which secrets we kept, and which dreams we chased. I followed her without question, not because she demanded it, but because I trusted her. Standing in the shadow of the Manor's ancient oak trees, that trust cracked like brittle wood. She led me on a tour of my own home, talking about where the string quartet would stand, where she wanted hanging chandeliers installed in the garden, how many guests she could squeeze in. If we trimmed the hedges and removed the old arbor Aunt Maren planted decades ago. Every word was a tiny theft. By the time we circled back to the front steps, the betrayal had fully taken shape. She didn't want a wedding. She wanted ownership of the Manor, of the legacy, of every inch of soil I had spent years caring for. And the worst part, she expected me to smile and applaud while she dismantled everything I protected. If only she knew that the land itself, the trees she dismissed, the roots she overlooked, had a way of remembering. And even then, in that first moment of quiet heartbreak, something ancient stirred beneath the soil. Something patient. Something watching. The days that followed felt like walking through a dream, one of those slow, murky ones, where nothing looks wrong at first glance, but everything feels wrong underneath. Amelia's wedding planners began swarming the Manor grounds like bright, perfumed locusts, measuring every stretch of land as though it already belonged to her. Yet it wasn't the people that unsettled me. It was the land. The Manor had always been alive, in a gentle, comforting way. Aunt Maren used to say the property had a memory. Old roots remember old truths, she'd whisper as she tended the gardens. I never understood what she meant until Amelia arrived with her greed disguised as lace. The ancient oak in the center of the property stood like a guardian, massive, twisted, older than some parts of town itself. Its branches arched wide enough to cast half the lawn in shade, and its trunk was thick with deep wrinkles, like it had been frowning for centuries. It was a sacred tree, Maren always insisted, a soul tree, she called it, a watching tree. Now, whenever Amelia stood beneath it, its leaves shivered. Subtle, but not from wind. One afternoon, as the planners argued over where to place the stage for the orchestra, a sudden thwack echoed across the lawn. A dead branch, no thicker than my arm, but heavy with rot, snapped clean off and smashed straight onto their music stand. Papers scattered like frightened birds. The planners shrieked. Amelia waved them off, annoyed. It's just an old tree. We'll trim it, or remove it if we have to. My stomach twisted. Remove it, she said it so casually, as if she were talking about a broken decoration. You can't cut it, I said firmly. That tree is protected. Aunt Maren filed preservation paperwork years ago. Oh, please, she rolled her eyes. I'll file new paperwork, money talks, not to the roots, I murmured. She didn't hear me, or maybe she didn't care. That evening, I walked out to the oak alone. Twilight draped the manor like a soft, bruised curtain. Crickets hummed their steady song, and the air felt thick with something expectation, maybe, or warning. I placed my hand on the trunk, the bark rough and warm beneath my palm. I'm trying, I whispered, but she won't listen. As if in reply, a low groan rippled through the branches. Not a creak, a groan, deep enough to vibrate under my skin. I stepped back, heart thudding. Behind me, footsteps crunched across the grass. Justin! His cologne arrived before he did, sharp, chemical, out of place among the earthy scents of the manor. You're very protective of this place, he said, standing too close, maybe too protective. It's my home, I replied. Of course I am. Amelia thinks you're being difficult, he said smoothly, and I agree. This wedding could elevate the manor's value. You should appreciate the opportunity. Opportunity. Another word for intrusion. I tightened my jaw. This land has survived storms, droughts, even fires. It doesn't bend for your convenience, Justin scoffed. Everything bends for the right price. But as he stepped away, a low rustle swept through the branches, strong, deliberate, like the tree exhaling in disgust. That night, as wind clawed at the windows and shadows swayed across the floors, I couldn't shake the feeling that something old and powerful had awakened. And for the first time since Amelia's announcement, I felt something like hope. Because if the land truly remembered, then it also knew how to defend itself. The morning of the wedding dawned too bright, too still, like the world was holding its breath. Sunlight spilled across the manor's lawn in a brittle golden sheet, illuminating rows of silk, draped chairs, towering floral arches, and a stage big enough for a small orchestra. Amelia had transformed the land into a glittering spectacle, determined to impress her 300 guests and the photographers she had hired from 3 different magazines. She looked radiant in her gown, of course. Amelia always glowed when she knew the world was watching. She floated through the preparations like a queen surveying her kingdom. Her smile sharpened to perfection. If she noticed the tension in my shoulders or the way I kept glancing toward the ancient oak, she didn't comment. By noon, guests filled the manor grounds laughing, gossiping, sipping champagne. The orchestra tuned their instruments beneath a gauzy white pavilion, placed directly under the oak's largest branch. I had warned Amelia about that. She brushed it off, its aesthetic. She'd said, stop being dramatic. Dramatic? If only she knew how dramatic the day would become. The first sign arrived with a tremor so faint I thought I imagined it. A subtle vibration under the soles of my shoes, a pulse running through the ground like a heartbeat. Then a whisper of wind threaded through the oak's branches, though the surrounding air remained still. Leaves shuddered, then stilled, then shuddered again. The ceremony began. Amelia and Justin stood before the officiant, preened and glowing. Cameras flashed like stars exploding. The orchestra shifted their sheet music, readying for the swelling piece Amelia had chosen, her grand entrance hymn. But before the first violinist could lift his bow, the air snapped. A sound like a distant crack of thunder ruptured across the lawn. Guests froze, birds burst from the oak in a frantic storm of feathers. The sky, clear moments before, darkened as a cluster of clouds coiled above the manor, dense, fast, moving, unnatural. The musicians exchanged uneasy glances. The conductor raised his hands again, forcing a smile. But as the first chord struck, a gust of wind slammed into the pavilion so violently that several music stands toppled over. One cello nearly flew from its chair. The performers cried out as papers scattered like panicked white birds. Amelia's face contorted in irritation. Secure the tent, she barked. Someone fix it. But no one had a chance. With a sudden, feral groan, louder than any sound the oak had ever made, The massive central branch cracked. Not slowly, not gently. It snapped like a bone under divine judgment. Screams tore through the crowd as the branch plummeted, smashing straight through the pavilion. Splinters exploded like shrapnel. Violins were crushed beneath ancient wood. The conductor dove aside as the fallen branch split the stage clean in two. Guests fled, shrieking, trampling decorations in their panic. Champagne flutes shattered under stamping heels. The floral arch toppled, dragging silk runners down with it. Justin grabbed Amelia's arm, but she stood frozen, her face pale, her mouth trembling around a sound she couldn't release. Her perfect wedding, her grand performance had been obliterated in minutes. I stood near the edge of the chaos, wind whipping my hair, heart pounding. A strange calm washed over me, not joy, not triumph, something heavier, quieter, like the earth itself had exhaled. The oak's branches rustled again, not angrily this time, but with the slow satisfaction of a debt paid. And in that noisy, frantic moment of destruction, one truth rang louder than the screams and splintering wood. Nature had finally spoken. And it had chosen justice. Long after the last guest fled and the broken pavilion lay scattered across the lawn like the bones of some fallen creature, the manor returned to silence. Not peace silence, a hollow, ringing quiet that settled into the cracks of the destroyed decorations and the splintered stage. The storm that had burst over us faded just as abruptly as it arrived, leaving only damp air and shattered pride behind. The oak, towering and unbothered, stood like a soldier who had done what needed to be done. The fallen branch, massive and half rotten in the core, rested heavily across the ruined orchestra setup, like the final period at the end of a sentence nature had been waiting decades to write. Amelia didn't cry at first. She stormed, ranted, paced the lawn barefoot with the bottom of her gown soaked and dirty. Her fury came in hot waves, at the weather, at the musicians, at the tree, at the universe, and eventually, predictably, at me. You knew, she screamed from across the lawn, her voice cracking. You knew something was going to happen. The accusation hit with the force of a slap, even though I expected it. I stood still, staring at her through the fading storm mist. I warned you about the tree. You didn't listen. Oh, stop pretending this is about preservation, she spat. You wanted to ruin this. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous, that word, once merely irritating, now sounded ridiculous. I almost laughed, I wasn't jealous. I said quietly, I was protective of the home, of the legacy, of everything you bulldozed over without thinking. She shook her head violently, her wet hair whipping around her face. You never supported me, you never. A low groan cut through her words. The remaining branches of the oak rustled with the weight of unspoken things. Amelia shot it a glare full of hatred and fear. Justin approached then, his suit stained with mud and rain. His jaw was tight, his voice strained. Amelia, the guests are demanding refunds. The orchestra says we're liable for the equipment, and the planners, they said they're quitting. For once, Amelia didn't have a sharp retort. Her knees buckled, and she crumpled onto the wet grass. Justin hesitated before awkwardly kneeling beside her, clearly wrestling with his own exhaustion and humiliation. The two of them sat there, dripping, defeated, small. I should have felt triumph, victory, something sweet and light after all the heartache. But instead, a heaviness spread through me. Because the truth was simple and bitter, Amelia wasn't a villain in a story. She was my sister, flawed, selfish, blind but still a girl who once braided my hair and shared bedtime whispers and swore we'd always look out for each other. Nature had delivered justice, yes, but justice rarely feels clean. In the following days, the wedding debris was cleared. Insurance claims tangled Amelia and Justin in legal knots. Word got around town, and whispers followed them everywhere, about omens, bad luck, divine punishment, careless planning. Amelia moved out of state with Justin shortly afterward. Our conversations became rare, then hollow, then non-existent. She stopped asking about the manor entirely. The oak tree, however, remained, proud, steady, untouchable. Sometimes I sit beneath it in the late afternoon, letting the breeze rustle through its leaves. The manor feels different now, calmer, older, wiser. As if the land, relieved of the burden of greed, can finally breathe again. I don't regret what happened. Not the warnings I gave, not the silence I kept, not the revenge nature chose to execute on its own terms. Some stories end with reconciliation. Ours ended with roots and echoes, and a truth whispered through ancient bark. Blood is family. But legacy belongs to those who respect it.